Mr Deputy President, I rise this morning to pay tribute to the Honourable Milton Arthur Morris AO, who was a giant of the New South Wales division of the Liberal Party, but most importantly, a giant of Maitland. Milton, who passed away on the 27th of February this year. Well, Milton represented the electorate of Maitland in the other place here for 24 years, from the 3rd of March 1956 until the 1980s, and he also served as Minister for Transport, Minister for Lands, Minister for Forests and Minister for Decentralisation and Development in the Askin, Lewis and Willis governments. Mr Deputy President, he was a man who our Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, described as embodying the spirit of civic responsibility with his commitment to improve the lives and make a difference for the people in this great state. Mr Morris made his mark in the transport portfolio, in which he served for almost 10 years in the 60s and 70s. During this period, Milton Morris, as Minister, introduced mandatory seatbelt laws, breathalyzers, L plates and P plates and speed radars on our roads in New South Wales.
What a great man.
This led to the death toll from car accidents dropping from 1,300 in 1965 down to 700 when he finished as the Minister. A remarkable statistic, considering the number of vehicles registered in this state more than doubled from 750,000 to over 2 million in that period. This is a legacy that we in this chamber can only hope to come close of achieving in our term. His legacy is the tens of thousands of people who are still living and loved by their families, and the hundreds of thousands of people who still have their parents, children, family and friends in New South Wales. In the transport portfolio, Milton also saw the planning and initialisation of major construction work, especially the Eastern Suburbs Railway line. This was a project that had been envisioned for decades. Plans had come and gone, and construction in some parts had even started in the decades prior, but had stopped. It is doubtful that if not for Milton Morris, Mr Maitland, who had a great love of trains, that the project would have ever become a reality. As the Minister for Transport, Andrew Constance, noted in the other place just yesterday, and I quote, "The last time we saw a government build a new rail tunnel under the city was 50 years ago, thanks to him. It is very pleasing that we are now doing that today," end quote. When Mr Morris entered Parliament in 1956, it was a vastly different time. I went back to read his first speech in the LA. In it he said, and I quote, "Another matter that will require our urgent attention is described in a word that has been coined in recent years, automation. It is the name given to what we might call the exciting realities of the new advances in mechanisation." Now, I can't help but wonder what Milton would have thought of the new driverless Sydney Metro that's already operating between northwest Sydney and Chatswood, which will soon be going under this city. When Mr Morris made his mark on this state, he was first and foremost the member for Maitland. He loved his electorate, and given that he was elected on 9 separate occasions, the electorate loved him as well. I listened with interest to the member for Ku-ring-gai yesterday about his memories of Milton, a Liberal colossus in that particular member's pro-Liberal household. Mr Morris's former press secretary wrote in his obituary that on the days in his electorate office he would wear a frayed sports coat, so the minister did not intimidate the little old ladies that came to see him with their problems in his electorate, Mr Deputy President. I'm told that he would regularly visit schools to talk to the students, and afterwards he would then stand at the gates, and the students would then introduce Mr Morris to their parents as they were leaving. Unfortunately, Mr Deputy President, I never had the opportunity to get to know Mr Morris personally, but I do know that he was well loved by the Maitland Liberals and his community. Reading through the comments section of the news articles in the local papers about his death, it seemed that everybody has a fond memory of Mr Maitland. I offer my condolences to his family, his children and his grandchildren, as well as his friends, but also his long-term staffer, Kay Sharp. I acknowledge the final words of the Maitland Mercury editorial regarding the passing of Milton Morris AO, which are very relevant in this parliament where he served as a minister. And I quote, "Despite all he accomplished and the many lives that he improved, it will undoubtedly be difficult for Mr Morris's family and his city and his region to accept that he is no longer with them in body, but we can but hope our leaders carry on in his spirit." Thank you, Mr Deputy President.